When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
15.
When do we want it?
Now.
When do we want it?
15.
When do we want it?
Now.
It's super loud. When do we want it?
15.
When do we want it?
Now.
Thank you so much.
Hey.
I want to introduce the next speaker. Next speaker is Nicholas Caleb. As it turns out, a few years ago, Nicholas Caleb was my math teacher at Concordia University, and I ended up dropping out of his math class to join Occupy Portland when that was going on a few years ago.
Wow. Yeah. Woo! Right on.
I gotta say,
that's awesome.
I'm really excited to introduce to you Nick Caleb, who's running as an independent for City Council on a Fight for 15 Now campaign. So, without further ado, Nicholas Caleb.
Capitalism is insane.
Yeah.
And when I talk about capitalism, what I mean, because there's a lot of debate over what kind of capitalism are you talking about, but when I talk about capitalism, I mean a system that profit, greed, and control of the workforce over all other values that we might have in our human society. It's a word I like to use to describe a system that destroys global culture, is laying siege to our global ecology. It's also a word that I use to describe an economic system that makes absolutely no sense anymore. It's totally abstracted. The values that we're talking about in trillions and billions of dollars while other people live on pennies, it doesn't even make sense anymore. It's completely gone awry. A lot of people will use different words to describe the system, and like John was talking about, there's no reason that we get hung up on the actual, neat definitions as a reason to divide us. Some people call it crony capitalism, some people call it corporate capitalism, some people call it deregulated capitalism. I just call it capitalism. I think it's a little bit more efficient. The point of it is that there is a system that interacts with government, it interacts with the economy. It's making the world increasingly inequitable. It's orienting us towards collapse, environmental, economic, all at the same time, and it's pushing us off of a cliff. There is a logic that underlies this system, and this logic is insane. And we need to be able to say that.
Yeah. Woo!
And even mainstream organizations, because you would have been crazy to say stuff like this even maybe before Shauna started talking about it, a protester or something like that. But now it's kind of in the mainstream. People can talk about it. And even Princeton University, is coming out with studies saying the United States is an oligarchy, right?
Yep.
This is the same logic that's going on. Regionally, we interact with capitalism in a variety of ways that's very disruptive to our lives. Right now, we're dealing with fossil fuel exports. People are trying to put coal trains through our cities, which will pollute us and pollute even more Chinese cities where this is going to end up. We're trying to put fossil fuel export infrastructure inside of our city, putting in oil terminals. People are trying to achieve permits for that. That's global capitalism at work. We've got severe industrial pollution in this city. Some of our air quality is some of the worst in the entire nation in some places, and our children have to breathe the effects of it. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We've got terrible automobile pollution as well, construction of highways through our system. The diesel pollution makes our children sick. We've got increased logging in our wilderness area. A lot of people will know that the Jazz timber sale has kind of opened up right now. It's a big issue in our community. This is a result of exploitative capitalism as well.
Yep.
We see this in our cities. We see stagnant wages. We see part-time and irregular labor instead of full-time labor. We see no benefits at jobs. I'm a part-time laborer. I teach 16 credits in university. I can't even get benefits. My hours are going to get cut. So I feel this personally. We see high poverty pretty much everywhere, increased homelessness, money-driven development that's displacing people. Portland is also a model for gentrification nationwide. And not on the happy side of we're the model. We're the model for letting it occur and actually pushing it and driving it forward. This is bad. It's not an accident, right? This is what capitalism does. It creates inequality. And we can see this at the local level, we can see it at the global level. It's happening all the time. The thing that we can also point at is that there's really interesting effects between global capitalism and local capitalism. Like the fossil fuel exports that are going through the city probably end up going to Southeast Asia somewhere, right? And they're probably going to end up at coal-fired power plants that are using to produce steel, which is going to be shipped across the United States and used to construct our green buildings, right? And so when you really break down like our green luxury high-rise condos that then contribute to more gentrification in our city. So there's a logic when you map this stuff out, you see kind of how it all works together. None of this really works for anybody, except for a small group of people. They've been called many things, most recently the 1%, but there's an oligarchy in this country that's benefiting quite well.
Yep.
We're going to hear about this, I'm sure, a few times, even for the rest of the night. We probably, in this room, already know this story. It's not the primary focus of the night, but it's worth mentioning wherever we're going to get into. So we've got something in front of us that we need to fight. How do we actually fight this? That's the question moving forward. Ajamu laid down some great knowledge on that just a minute ago. I think the first thing we have to do is imagine an alternative system. One thing that capitalism does better than any other system that I know of is it convinces everybody that there's simply no alternative to this, and that we just got to get along with it, and that to say no makes you an insane person. So we've got to develop the ability to say no. When we see insanity in front of us, you can't participate in it, or you become insane, slowly but surely. I personally would like to articulate some values that I think might be useful for us in the future. One of those is workplace democracy, I think is a value that we if you want to be very Marxist about it, I want to say workers should control the means of production.
Yes. Own the fruits of the labor.
Environmental sustainability is a value that we can all get behind. But I think in Portland especially, we're one of these places where we have a greenwashed environmental sustainability, where we can really entertain that growth can equal sustainability, and this logic is just crazy. I favor a bioregional approach to environmental sustainability, where we start to value our system as a whole and start to even implement projects of degrowth at the same time.
Yep.
We've got to integrate small-scale political democracy. Even probably at city level is too much of too big of a institution for us to really be democratic actors. We've got to have our communities that have democratic say in what happens in our neighborhoods. We've got to push for social justice and equity in all fields of life at all time. And more basically, we've just got to insist upon cooperation instead of competition. So there's a word that goes along with these sentiments, and it's called socialism.
Yep.
Right? And it's earned a stigma, not so much in my generation, but in generations past through Cold War stuff. Nobody's allowed to say the S word anymore, just like we weren't allowed to say the C word until recently as well, capitalism. But now we can talk about it, and we can articulate it, and we can see. That's not the, I know, it's not the C word people are used to. It is a C word. We didn't talk about in public. Ambiguity about that. So anyway, it's our job to articulate these values, I think, in our system. And we also have to build movements. Just like Ajamu said, we can't just close down communication because people have slightly different analysis or whatever. In my understanding, this means making environmental, economic, and social justice to destroy the boundaries between those things. These are the same issues for people. It's all about human well-being and natural sustainability, and it's never really divided. We create that division, and so we have to start insisting that these are the same things. There's a lot of that going on already in Portland, and I think it's just about cooperating and working together. Our movements need to be willing to engage in direct action as well.
Yeah.
Some of the really inspiring stuff that's going on, to me at least, is trying to get in the way of fossil fuel infrastructure. The Rising Tide tried to shut down this megaload going to the tar sands recently. People putting their bodies on the line to try to shut down. And on the labor side, we've seen a slurry of almost strikes in the city of Portland, where the working class has really shown that if they're willing to press and really to dive in and really strike, that they can win a lot of concessions.
Yes.
I mean, I guess I would have liked it if one of them would have gone on strike, because that would have been exciting. But nevertheless, people are starting to get that. They're starting to figure it out, that if they actually push on that and they actually get ready to strike, that they can win a lot. And so, and both PSU, the professors and the employees at PSU that want to strike, and the Portland Association of Teachers did a really nice thing. They took community interests that were outside of their direct bargaining interests for their unions, and they put those on the table for us as well. And so we're really starting to see the fledgling community in this socialist movement come together. People are starting to pick it up really quick, and I'm super excited about that. So another thing that we should do, and I'm not saying that it's for everybody, but that we should also engage in the electoral system. We can actually win. And one of the things that Shama was able to show us up in Seattle is that if we organize the right way, if we organize by our values, and we don't sort of run away from words and try to pretend that we're something that we're not, that we can actually win as leftists in the electoral system. But if we're going to do that, it's got to be completely grassroots, and it's got to be without corporate money. No
Amen.
exceptions.
Amen.
So I am actually running for city council. Probably some people have seen the signs, or maybe you caught a glimpse of something in the media or something like that. But there's no way that I would have even come close to throwing my hat into the ring if Shama wouldn't have been doing the work that she was doing up in Seattle. It's been a huge inspiration. And just watching their organization and the energy going behind it, and then having the SA folks come down and talk to us about their organization, and you all hear from Rami in a little bit, it's been a real amazing thing to hear. And then sort of taking a look at Portland and saying, why doesn't anything like that happen? You know, and pretty much all it took was declaring and saying almost the same words, and then all of a sudden people were like, yeah, we like that, right? And so there's fertile ground for organizing around issues that we care about right now. I think now is a great time, whether it's this election or whether it's coming elections or whatever, it's a great time to jump in and start to be really honest about where we want to go in the future. So the campaign that I'm running is very similar to Shama's. It's around making quality of life for people in the city a little bit better. And I like to say that everybody has a right to the city. This is the framework that I like. It's a phrase that's been going around for a long time. I learned it from David Harvey, who's a Marxist geographer.
Yeah. Love David Harvey.
But for me, you can articulate this in a lot of different ways, but the right to the city is a collective right. It's not an individual right, it's not a private property right or something like that. It's a right that we all get a say in how our city is constructed. It's a right that, you know, developers and City Hall and the Portland Business Alliance, that they might have a say, but their say is just on the same level as anybody else's. It's a democratic right. It's a right that says that money can't buy your influence in the city. So the right to the city, for my platform at least, is to raise the living wage to $15 an hour straight away. And that was the first thing we said, and it took a week before all centrist Democrats in the city were said, oh, yeah, we'll raise the minimum wage. Yes, of course, we agree with that. Yes, and it's spread like wildfire. Even state legislators, you know, people running for legislature are saying this as well. So that issue took about a week to really get to where it was. Of course, there's a caveat, right? We can't do it because there's preemption, and so they think the conversation stopped right there. I put out some proposals that get around that preemption. Won't get into it a ton tonight, but don't let people tell you that we can't raise the living wage standard in Portland. That's a bunch of crap. We definitely can do it. Ensuring housing justice is something that we need to do in the city. And this means a lot of different things, but it means, again, our legislature in Oregon has preempted us from raising rent controls, but we have to be a little bit creative. But coming up with Portland-specific anti-displacement policies so we can actually keep people in their home. People that produce the culture in the city, that work hard in the city, deserve to be able to live here and afford to enjoy it and not have to be kicked out to the outskirts and then bust into the city. major right to the city component that we need to act on right now is to stop criminalizing homelessness. We just reached the end of our 10-year plan or whatever to end homelessness, and it seems like as the city got closer to that and figured out that they weren't going to solve it through the sort of happy social program sort of way, that we'll just push that problem away and we'll beat the homeless out of the city. And if we don't have to look at them, then homelessness doesn't exist anymore. It's terrible, right? It's totally inhumane, and we need to come up with something much better than that. We need environmental justice in the city as well. And this means a lot of things. First, it means on the softer policy side, just pushing forward the climate action plan that's been in place for a while that doesn't really have any teeth to it. Portland, we're very famous for putting together nice, happy-sounding policies that don't have any enforcement mechanism. So, climate action plan. Oh yeah, how do you implement that? You suggest it, and hopefully businesses will tool up and all the rest. Or precautionary principle in science. How do you actually make that happen? But it sounds nice, right? Actually, we have to put teeth on these things. When we do development in the city, because some development is inevitable, right? But when we do it, we can't call things sustainable development or green development or density development or whatever that we're going to call it and pretend that this is social justice enough when the communities that we're putting these new developments in are getting kicked out of the city.
Yep.
This is wrong. It plays environmentalists and social justice advocates together is what it does. And to be quite honest, the quality of developments that are going in the east side aren't up to green standard anyway. They're putting up developments just as fast as they possibly can. So,
Hell yeah, they are.
If we're not taking care of people that actually live in neighborhoods, and if they want to stay and they're not helped in staying there, we're not only are we failing our social justice means, but we're also failing in environmental justice, because these things are the same. We need to ban coal trains from coming through the city.
Yeah!
We passed a resolution, a soft resolution, but we can actually ban it. I've been writing about this for a long time, and lawyers will say, no, I can't do it, it's the railroads and everything else, it's a bunch of crap. And even if it gets tied up, markets in China are not going to be clamoring for coal at the same level that they are right now. That market is going away.
Yep.
And so people are trying to dig this stuff out of the ground as fast as possible and just push it through the community. It's a huge danger. We've got to say no very, very affirmatively.
Yep.
We've got to start penalizing our corporate polluters within the city. And some people will know that the green brand that we put on Portland is not, it's skin deep. If you start to look, it's a brand. It's exactly what it is. When you start to look underneath of it, we're a very polluted city. We've actually got the #1 polluter in the entire country in our city, Precision Cast Parts.
Yep.
And people that live in sort of southeast Portland know that every once in a while, a cloud of pollution might just sort of come over your neighborhood for a while, and you have to stay indoors for a while.
Don't forget ESCO.
Oh, I'm not going to forget ESCO. That's my next point. So ESCO is this other company in town, and ESCO is in Northwest Portland. About 10 years ago, they were kind of on the cusp of deciding where they wanted to go with their company. And they could have retooled and been the renewable energy machine producing company in the world, right? They could have done that. And instead, they retooled their company to invest in the worst fossil fuel infrastructure in the country. So they do coal mining, they do mountaintop mining removal, they do tar sands, they do Amazonian deforestation. They chose the least socially responsible path that they could possibly take. And that would be bad enough on its own because, right, it's Portland, we don't want that in our city. But as a byproduct of their production, they have some of the worst quality in the entire nation, air quality in the entire nation. I think the schools that are in the area are in the top 5% worst polluted air quality in the entire nation. And this company is allowed to exist and actually is celebrated routinely by the city and Portland State and all the rest of it. So, within the theme of what we're talking about, ESCO is a company that's ripe for the workers taking over the means of production and actually producing something socially responsible within the city. So I'm going to wrap up really quick so we can move on with the program, but a couple of campaign promises that I've made. The first is that I'm going to limit campaign contributions to $50 in cash. So no more than that. So if I've already hit you up, that means I can't hit you up anymore.
Right on.
If I haven't hit you up, then I'm probably going to hit you up a little bit later today. And then if I'm elected, just like Shama did up in Seattle, I'm only going to accept the salary of the average salary of a Portland worker in Portland. And the rest of that money will go toward actually putting some funding into local social movements and trying to put together that cohesion that we've been talking about tonight. So this is a fundraiser for Shama, right? And she's done us a big favor up in Seattle, I think, by opening up some space, not only in Portland for us, but across the nation. And so I would just, as I end, encourage you to give 15 if you can to Shama. But if you've got more that you can give to help her retire her campaign debt, give generously tonight. She really deserves it, and I'm really excited to see her come a little bit later tonight. So thanks, Nick Caleb, running for City Council, calebforcouncil.org. Sign up at the back if you want to, and people will gladly take your money if you want to donate it to us.